The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the HSS Defiant as it glided silently through the darkness. Stars twinkled like distant diamonds against the black canvas, offering a peaceful view that contrasted sharply with the tension aboard the bridge. Captain Jeho Park stood with perfect posture, his experienced eyes scanning the main view screen. 20 years of service had left their mark in the subtle gray at his temples, but his presence commanded respect from every member of his crew. The Defiant represented humanity's greatest achievement, a perfect blend of power and elegance, with its sleek hull housing technology that most of Earth's citizens could only dream about. Lieutenant Hannah Kim sat at her station, her fingers moving with practiced precision across the holographic controls. The soft blue glow of the sensor displays reflected in her focused eyes as she monitored the ship's advanced detection systems. The quantum arrays under her command could detect a small shuttle at distances that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. Engineering reports the quantum drive is operating at peak efficiency, Captain, reported Chief Engineer Lee from his station. The revolutionary propulsion system had been tested extensively, but this was its first real deployment beyond known space. The gentle hum of the engines provided a constant reminder of the incredible power at their disposal. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person aware of their role in this historic mission. The Defiant was tasked with pushing the boundaries of human exploration, venturing further than any Earth ship had gone before. They carried the hopes and dreams of humanity with them into the unknown. Lieutenant Kim's posture suddenly changed, her back straightening as new data flowed across her screen. "Captain," she called out, her voice carrying a note of urgency that immediately drew everyone's attention. "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures at bearing 347 Mark 218. Captain Park moved to stand behind her station, studying the readings with a practiced eye. Analysis. The signatures don't match anything in our database, sir. They're massive, suggesting vessels far larger than anything in Earth's fleet. Multiple contacts, approaching on an intercept course." The captain's mind raced through the possibilities. First contact protocols had been drilled into every crew member, but theory and reality were often very different things. "Time to intercept. At current speeds, 12 minutes, sir. Sound general quarters. All hands to battle stations." The captain's calm voice belied the gravity of the situation. Red alert lights began pulsing throughout the ship as crew members rushed to their positions. The unknown vessels emerged from the darkness like predators leaving their den. Their designs were unlike anything human eyes had ever seen. Massive ships that seemed to bend the very light around them, their hulls shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Song. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "On screen," ordered Park, squaring his shoulders. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that made several bridge crew members gasp. The being that appeared was tall and ethereal, its form seeming to shift and flow like liquid mercury. Its voice, when it came, was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. "We are the Galactic Concordat," the being announced, its words somehow perfectly understood despite its alien nature. "For 10,000 years, we have maintained order among the stars. We have watched your kind, observed your development, and found you wanting." Captain Park maintained his composure, though his heart raced. "I am Captain Jeho Park of the Earth ship Defiant. We come in peace and seek diplomatic relations." The alien's expression shifted in a way that might have been amusement or contempt. "Diplomatic relations. You misunderstand your position, Captain. We do not negotiate with primitive species. The Concordat rules. Others submit. This is the natural order." "Surely we can find common ground," Park suggested, his diplomatic training kicking in. "Humanity has much to offer." "You have nothing we need," the being interrupted. "Your choices are simple. Submit to Concordat rule and accept your proper place as a servant species, or be eliminated. You have one standard rotation to decide." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Captain Park returned to his chair, his mind already working through scenarios. The Defiant might be humanity's most advanced ship, but they were facing an empire that had ruled the stars for millennia. "Orders, sir," Lieutenant Kim asked, her voice steady despite the situation. Captain Park allowed himself a small smile. The Concordat had made one critical mistake. They had assumed humanity would react like every other species they had encountered. They didn't understand that humans had a long history of defying impossible odds. "Begin passage scans of their vessels. I want to know everything about their capabilities, and send a tight beam transmission to Earth Command. They need to know what we're facing." He paused, looking at each member of his bridge crew. "The Concordat thinks they know how this will end. Let's show them why they shouldn't underestimate humanity." As the crew began their tasks with renewed purpose, Park knew that this encounter would change everything. Humanity had dreamed of reaching the stars, but they had never imagined their welcome would be like this. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of the Defiant, but potentially the future of the entire human race. Commander Tawan Lee kept his eyes fixed on the tactical display, watching the supposedly diplomatic vessel from the Concordat with growing suspicion. Years of combat experience had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now every one of them was screaming danger. The alien ship's power readings were fluctuating in a pattern he'd seen too many times before, the telltale signs of weapons charging behind lowered shields. "Captain," Lee called out, his fingers already moving across his console, "the Concordat vessel is powering up their weapon systems." Captain Park nodded calmly from his command chair. "Right on schedule. Implement Protocol Shadow." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, each member knowing their role in the carefully planned deception. On the surface, the Defiant appeared to be nothing more than an advanced exploration vessel. In reality, it housed technology that would have seemed like magic even to most of Earth's military. "They're hailing us again," reported Communications Officer Song. On screen, Park ordered, his face a mask of careful neutrality. The ethereal being from before appeared, but this time its fluid features held none of the earlier false diplomacy. "Your time to decide has not yet expired, but we detect your ship preparing defensive measures. This is unacceptable." "We are merely maintaining standard operating procedures," Park replied smoothly. "Surely you understand the need for basic precautions during first contact situations." "Your deception is noted," the being stated coldly. "We will now demonstrate the price of defiance." The transmission cut off abruptly. Commander Lee's console blazed with warnings. Multiple energy signatures. "They're launching boarding craft." "Let them come," Park said with a slight smile. "Activate the phase shift grid." Throughout the ship, crews moved to predetermined positions. The Defiant's hull began to shimmer slightly as the experimental phase shift technology came online. This was the moment they had trained for, the trap they had carefully prepared. The Concordat boarding craft approached with impressive speed, their designs clearly optimized for forced entry operations. They attached themselves to the Defiant's hull like metallic parasites, cutting tools already beginning to bore through what they thought was standard armor plating. Commander Lee watched his tactical display with growing satisfaction as the first boarding parties breached the hull. The alien warriors, encased in advanced battle armor, charged through the openings, and found themselves passing straight through seemingly solid walls and floors, their momentum carrying them into carefully prepared containment fields. "First wave captured," Lee reported. 23 hostiles contained in Holding Field Alpha. Their weapons and armor are completely inactive. The phase shift technology was humanity's ace in the hole. By altering the quantum state of the ship's structure, they could control exactly what passed through the hull and where it ended up. The Concordat's boarding parties were essentially walking into invisible cages of their own accord. "Second wave incoming," Lieutenant Kim announced from her sensor station. "They're trying a different approach, multiple points of entry." The Concordat forces had indeed adjusted their tactics, but it made no difference. Wave after wave of their elite warriors found themselves trapped, their advanced technology rendered useless by fields they couldn't even detect until it was too late. On the main viewer, the Concordat diplomatic vessel's commander appeared again, its ethereal features now clearly showing agitation. What trickery is this? Our boarding parties report success, but have gone silent. Explain. Perhaps, Captain Park suggested mildly, you should consider that humanity might be more advanced than you assumed. Your boarding parties are safe but contained. We would be happy to return them once we have established more equitable diplomatic relations. The alien commander's form rippled with what might have been rage. You dare to take Concordat warriors prisoner? This insult will not stand. The insult, Park replied firmly, was assuming we would simply submit to your demands. Humanity does not bow to threats, no matter how ancient or powerful the species making them might be. The transmission cut off again, but this time the Concordat vessel began to move. Commander Lee tracked its motion carefully, noting how it was trying to maneuver into a better firing position. They're charging their main weapon array, Lee reported. Energy readings are off the scale. Time to show them another surprise, Park said. Activate the mirror shields. As the Concordat vessel fired, its energy beam struck the Defiance shields and reflected right back at the attacker. The alien ship's own shields flared bright under the impact of their own weapon. Commander Lee allowed himself a small smile as he reported, direct hit. Their shield strength is down to 60% from their own attack. The bridge crew maintained their professional demeanor, but there was a new energy in the air, a growing confidence. The Concordat had expected an easy victory over a primitive species. Instead, they were facing an opponent who had anticipated their every move and prepared accordingly. Send to the Concordat vessel, Park ordered. We are still willing to discuss peaceful relations between our peoples, but if you prefer to continue this demonstration, we have many more surprises to share. As they waited for a response, Commander Lee kept his tactical systems ready. He knew this was just the beginning. The Concordat wouldn't accept this humiliation easily, but for the first time, an alien power that had dominated the galaxy for millennia had met a species they couldn't simply overwhelm or intimidate. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity's first major encounter with galactic civilization had changed the rules of the game forever, and the Defiant was just getting started. In the depths of engineering, Dr. Su-Jin Cho worked with focused intensity at her main control station. The quantum mirror drive was her greatest achievement, a system that could create perfect duplicates of the Defiant, each one indistinguishable from the original on enemy sensors. Her fingers moved precisely across the controls as she made final adjustments to the system. All power systems are ready, she reported through the ship's comm. Quantum matrix is stable and waiting for your command, Captain. Above on the bridge, Captain Park watched as the Concordat fleet surrounded them. Dozens of massive warships had arrived to join the original diplomatic vessel, their weapons charged and ready. They had formed a perfect sphere around the Defiant, using classical military doctrine to ensure no possible escape route. They're demanding our immediate surrender, Communications Officer Song announced. They say they will open fire in 2 minutes if we don't comply. Captain Park leaned forward in his chair. Dr. Cho, are you ready to show them something new? Yes, sir, her voice came back, carrying a hint of pride. They're about to learn that humans don't think like everyone else. Begin the operation on my mark. Park waited until the final seconds of the ultimatum ticked away. Now, Dr. Cho activated the quantum mirror drive. Energy coursed through the ship's specialized systems as reality itself seemed to ripple around them. The Defiant appeared to split apart like light through a prism, multiplying into dozens of perfect copies. Each duplicate was completely solid to sensors, giving off identical power readings, life signs, and energy signatures. In engineering, Dr. Cho monitored the quantum stability readings carefully. Creating quantum duplicates was incredibly complex. One tiny miscalculation could collapse the entire system. But her years of work had paid off. The duplicates were perfect. On the Concordat ships, confusion reigned. Their sensors showed multiple Defiants where there had been only one, each reading as completely real. Their perfect tactical formation was now worthless, as they found themselves surrounded by what appeared to be an entire fleet that had appeared from nowhere. Concordat fleet is breaking formation, Lieutenant Kim reported from her sensor station, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from her voice. Their command structure appears to be in disarray. Of course it is, Commander Lee commented from tactical. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming force against a single target. They don't know how to handle multiple threats appearing inside their formation. Captain Park nodded. Begin Phase 2. All duplicates to execute random attack patterns. The multiple Defiants began to move, each one taking a different vector through the Concordat fleet. The alien ships tried to track them, but their targeting systems couldn't determine which ship was real and which were duplicates. Every time they focused on one target, 3 more would appear to threaten their flanks. Enemy ships are firing, Lee reported calmly. Their shots are passing through our duplicates without effect. They still can't identify the real Defiant. In engineering, Dr. Cho smiled as she watched the quantum readings. The beauty of the system is that it doesn't just create images, she explained to her engineering team. Each duplicate exists in a quantum state that reads as completely real until something interacts with it. By the time they realize it's not solid, we're already somewhere else. The Concordat fleet's perfectly coordinated sphere had dissolved into chaos. Ships fired at multiple targets, tried to pursue duplicates that would vanish and reappear elsewhere, and sometimes nearly collided with each other in their confusion. Incoming transmission from the Concordat flagship, Song announced. They're demanding to know what kind of technology we're using. No response needed, Park ordered. Let them wonder. Dr. Cho, prepare for the final phase. Quantum matrix reconfiguring, she acknowledged. Ready in 30 seconds. The duplicates suddenly began moving in complex patterns, each one appearing to power up weapons. The Concordat ships reacted predictably, spreading out to engage multiple threats. At exactly that moment, all the duplicates vanished simultaneously. The real Defiant, which had been hidden among its copies, fired its engines at full power. Before the Concordat fleet could regroup, they shot through the gap their enemies had created in their own formation. We're clear, Commander Lee reported. Concordat ships are attempting to pursue, but their formation is too scattered to catch us. Captain Park allowed himself a small smile. Well done, everyone. Especially you, Dr. Cho. Your quantum mirror drive performed perfectly. They never expect us to think differently, she replied, pride evident in her voice. All their advanced technology, and they still can't handle something that doesn't fit their expectations. As the Defiant moved away from the confused Concordat fleet, the crew knew this was just the beginning. They had shown that humanity could match and even exceed alien technology. More importantly, they had demonstrated that human creativity and unconventional thinking could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. The Concordat would regroup eventually, and they would be angry. But they would also be uncertain for the first time in millennia. They had just learned that their assumptions about primitive species were dangerously wrong, and that humanity would not be an easy conquest. The legend of the ghost ship Defiant was born that day, the vessel that could become many, that appeared and disappeared at will, that turned its enemies' greatest strengths into weaknesses. It was a legend that would only grow in the battles to come. Navigation Officer Yum-Ho Kang's fingers danced across his control panel as he guided the Defiant through the dense asteroid field. Most pilots would consider this suicide, but Kang saw patterns where others saw chaos. The massive rocks tumbled through space in what seemed like random motion, but to his trained eye, they formed a deadly dance he could predict and exploit. 3 Concordat cruisers still in pursuit, Lieutenant Kim reported from her sensor station. They're maintaining distance but haven't given up the chase. Captain Park watched the main viewer as another massive asteroid spun past, missing the Defiant by meters. Status of our shield strength, Commander Lee. Shields at 92%. The new reinforcement algorithms are handling the micro-impacts perfectly. Lee's voice carried a note of satisfaction. The Concordat ships aren't doing as well. Their shields are dropping steadily from debris impacts. Kang kept his focus on navigation, his mind calculating trajectories and velocities. The Concordat ships were following the only clear path through the asteroid field, exactly as their training dictated. It made them predictable, and predictable meant vulnerable. "Sir," Kang spoke up, "I see an opportunity ahead. There's a cluster of spinning asteroids that will create a temporary corridor. It's unstable, but if we time it right." "Do it," Park ordered without hesitation. He had learned to trust his navigator's instincts. The Defiant dove into a gap between two massive asteroids that seemed to be on a collision course. The crew felt the ship shudder as Kang pushed the engines to their limits, threading through spaces that seemed impossibly small. Behind them, the Concordat ships hesitated. Their battle computers were warning them that the maneuver violated every safety protocol in their database. By the time they decided to follow, the gap had changed. "Impact detected," Kim reported with barely contained excitement. "One Concordat cruiser has sustained major damage from asteroid collision. They're falling back." The remaining pursuers tried to adjust their course, but their rigid adherence to standard protocols made them too slow to handle the constantly changing environment. Another cruiser clipped an asteroid, sending it spinning away with damaged engines. "Last pursuing vessel is breaking off," Lee confirmed. "They're signaling a general retreat." The bridge crew maintained their professional demeanor, but there was a sense of pride in the air. They had just proven that human intuition and flexibility could overcome even the most advanced alien technology. Word of the Defiant's exploits spread quickly through Concordat space. The massive empire had never encountered a species that could so consistently outmaneuver their best ships. Reports reached their high command of the ghost ship that appeared where it shouldn't be possible, that survived conditions their most advanced vessels couldn't handle. In a vast chamber aboard the Concordat Central Command Station, the High Council gathered to discuss this unprecedented threat. The ethereal beings that had ruled space for millennia found themselves experiencing an unfamiliar sensation: uncertainty. "The human vessel continues to defy our expectations," one council member stated, its form rippling with agitation. "They ignore established tactical doctrine. They take routes our ships cannot follow. They survive situations our calculations say are impossible." "Perhaps," another suggested, "we have underestimated this species. Their technology appears primitive by our standards, yet they achieve results we cannot match." Meanwhile, the Defiant had reached a dense nebula on the edge of Concordat space. Kang studied the swirling gases with intense concentration. Solar storms rippled through the cosmic clouds, creating conditions that should tear any ship apart. "Sensors are nearly useless in there," Kim reported. "The energy discharges will blind us completely." "Perfect," Park replied. "Mr. Kang, take us in. Let's show them another impossible trick." Kang guided the ship into the nebula, using visual cues and instinct where instruments failed. The Defiant's enhanced shields handled the energy discharges, while their pursuers dared not follow into conditions their computers labeled as unsurvivable. The Concordat's rigid hierarchy began to show cracks as more reports arrived. Ship captains became hesitant to engage the human vessel, knowing their standard tactics were useless against an enemy that ignored the rules of space combat. For the first time in their long history, the Concordat faced an opponent they couldn't simply overwhelm with superior numbers and technology. In their council chamber, the Concordat leaders faced a disturbing realization. Their dominance of space had been based on technological superiority and strict adherence to proven doctrine. But the humans had shown that creativity and adaptability could overcome even the most advanced technology. "This single ship has caused more disruption than entire rebel fleets," one council member observed, "not through superior firepower, but through unpredictability. How do we combat an enemy whose actions we cannot anticipate?" The question hung unanswered in the chamber. The Concordat had always relied on their ability to calculate and control every situation. Now they faced an enemy that thrived on chaos, that turned their own rigid thinking against them. For the first time in millennia, the rulers of space felt fear, not of the Defiant's weapons, but of the human capacity to make the impossible possible. "Sir," Kang spoke up, "I see an opportunity ahead. There's a cluster of spinning asteroids that will create a temporary corridor. It's unstable, but if we time it right." "Do it," Park ordered without hesitation. He had learned to trust his navigator's instincts. The Defiant dove into a gap between two massive asteroids that seemed to be on a collision course. The crew felt the ship shudder as Kang pushed the engines to their limits, threading through spaces that seemed impossibly small. Behind them, the Concordat ships hesitated. Their battle computers were warning them that the maneuver violated every safety protocol in their database. By the time they decided to follow, the gap had changed. "Impact detected," Kim reported with barely contained excitement. "One Concordat cruiser has sustained major damage from asteroid collision. They're falling back." The remaining pursuers tried to adjust their course, but their rigid adherence to standard protocols made them too slow to handle a constantly changing environment. Another cruiser clipped an asteroid, sending it spinning away with damaged engines. "Last pursuing vessel is breaking off," Lee confirmed. "They're signaling a general retreat." The bridge crew maintained their professional demeanor, but there was a sense of pride in the air. They had just proven that human intuition and flexibility could overcome even the most advanced alien technology. Word of the Defiant's exploits spread quickly through Concordat space. The massive empire had never encountered a species that could so consistently outmaneuver their best ships. Reports reached their high command of the ghost ship that appeared where it shouldn't be possible, that survived conditions their most advanced vessels couldn't handle. In a vast chamber aboard the Concordat Central Command Station, the High Council gathered to discuss this unprecedented threat. The ethereal beings that had ruled space for millennia found themselves experiencing an unfamiliar sensation: uncertainty. "The human vessel continues to defy our expectations," one council member stated, its form rippling with agitation. "They ignore established tactical doctrine. They take routes our ships cannot follow. They survive situations our calculations say are impossible." "Perhaps," another suggested, "we have underestimated this species. Their technology appears primitive by our standards, yet they achieve results we cannot match." Meanwhile, the Defiant had reached a dense nebula on the edge of Concordat space. Kang studied the swirling gases with intense concentration. Solar storms rippled through the cosmic clouds, creating conditions that should tear any ship apart. "Sensors are nearly useless in there," Kim reported. "The energy discharges will blind us completely." "Perfect," Park replied. "Mr. Kang, take us in. Let's show them another impossible trick." Kang guided the ship into the nebula, using visual cues and instinct where instruments failed. The Defiant's enhanced shields handled the energy discharges, while their pursuers dared not follow into conditions their computers labeled as unsurvivable. The Concordat's rigid hierarchy began to show cracks as more reports arrived. Ship captains became hesitant to engage the human vessel, knowing their standard tactics were useless against an enemy that ignored the rules of space combat. For the first time in their long history, the Concordat faced an opponent they couldn't simply overwhelm with superior numbers and technology. In their council chamber, the Concordat leaders faced a disturbing realization. Their dominance of space had been based on technological superiority and strict adherence to proven doctrine. But the humans had shown that creativity and adaptability could overcome even the most advanced technology. "This single ship has caused more disruption than entire rebel fleets," one council member observed, "not through superior firepower, but through unpredictability. How do we combat an enemy whose actions we cannot anticipate?" The question hung unanswered in the chamber. The Concordat had always relied on their ability to calculate and control every situation. Now they faced an enemy that thrived on chaos, that turned their own rigid thinking against them. For the first time in millennia, The rulers of space felt fear, not of the Defiant's weapons, but of the human capacity to make the impossible possible. As Kang guided the Defiant through another suicidal maneuver, he understood what the Concordat couldn't, that the true power of humanity lay not in their technology, but in their ability to see possibilities where others saw only obstacles. The ripples of fear spreading through Concordat space were just the beginning of a change that would reshape the galaxy. The massive form of the Concordat celestial fleet filled the sensor displays of the Defiant. 1,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of alien engineering, moved in perfect formation through space. Their hulls gleamed with an otherworldly light, a display of power meant to inspire awe and fear. Dr. Sujin Cho worked frantically in engineering, making final adjustments to her newest creation. The quantum entanglement drive represented a leap forward in human technology, a system that could literally fold space itself, allowing the Defiant to traverse vast distances in an instant. Drive status. Captain Park's voice came through the comm system. Final calibrations complete. Cho replied, her eyes fixed on the quantum stability readings. The system is ready, but I should warn you, we've never tested it under combat conditions. Today will be our test, Park responded calmly. The Celestial Fleet isn't giving us many options. On the bridge, Lieutenant Kim's sensor readings painted a grim picture. They're spreading out in a spherical formation. Energy readings suggest they're preparing to launch a coordinated strike. The Celestial Fleet moved with the precision of a single organism, each ship taking its predetermined position in a complex battle strategy developed over thousands of years. Their commanders were confident. No vessel had ever escaped when faced with this level of firepower. Dr. Cho, Park called out, prepare for first jump on my mark. The Concordat fleet's commander appeared on their main screen, its ethereal form radiating absolute certainty. Your defiance ends today. The Celestial Fleet has never failed to eliminate its target. Surrender now, and we will grant you a swift end. Park allowed himself a small smile. You still haven't learned, have you? Humans don't think the way you do. He cut the transmission and nodded to Dr. Cho. Now, the quantum entanglement drive engaged with a subtle vibration that ran through the ship. Space itself seemed to bend around them, and suddenly the Defiant was behind the Celestial Fleet's formation. Jump successful, Cho reported excitedly. All systems stable. The Concordat fleet reacted with surprising speed, beginning a massive turning maneuver to bring their weapons to bear. But before they could complete it, Park gave another order. Second jump. Let's show them what this drive can really do. The Defiant vanished again, reappearing thousands of kilometers away. The Celestial Fleet's perfect formation began to break as ships turned in different directions, trying to predict where their target would appear next. They're still thinking in straight lines, Park observed to his crew. They can't understand that we're not limited by traditional space travel anymore. Commander Lee's tactical display showed the growing confusion in the enemy fleet. Their formation is starting to fragment. They're breaking into smaller groups to try to cover more area. Exactly what we wanted, Park nodded. Dr. Cho, begin random jump pattern alpha. The Defiant began a series of rapid jumps, appearing and disappearing across vast distances. Each time they materialized, they stayed just long enough to be detected before vanishing again. The Celestial Fleet's attempts to pursue became increasingly disorganized as they tried to chase a target that didn't need to travel through normal space. In engineering, Dr. Cho monitored the quantum drive's performance with growing confidence. The system is performing better than our simulations predicted. We can maintain this pattern indefinitely. The Concordat commanders were facing a situation their tactical doctrine had never prepared them for. Their target wasn't trying to escape or fight. It was systematically destroying their formation's cohesion, making their overwhelming numbers work against them. Enemy ships are starting to collide with each other, Kim reported. Their pursuit vectors are crossing as they try to predict our jumps. Park watched as the mighty Celestial Fleet descended into chaos. Ships fired at sensor ghosts, changed course to intercept jumps that never happened, and struggle to maintain any kind of coordinated effort. Their entire strategy is based on controlling space. Park explained to his crew. They don't understand that we're not bound by the same rules they are. The Defiant continued its dance through quantum space, each jump precisely calculated to cause maximum confusion. The hunters had become the hunted, but not in a way they could fight against. Their prey simply refused to exist in the same space they did. Finally, the Concordat fleet began to retreat. Their perfect formation was in shambles. Their coordination shattered. They had faced an enemy that didn't just outmaneuver them. It operated on a completely different level of spatial existence. As the last enemy ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, the Defiant's crew allowed themselves to celebrate quietly. They had faced the most powerful fleet in known space and emerged victorious not through superior firepower, but through superior thinking. "They'll be back," Commander Lee noted soberly. "Yes," Park agreed, "but next time they'll be afraid. And fear makes you predictable." Dr. Cho's voice came through the comm, carrying a note of pride. "They can bring 10,000 ships next time. As long as they keep thinking in straight lines, we'll always be one step ahead." The Defiant hung silently in space, its quantum drive humming softly. They had changed the rules of space combat forever, proving that creativity and innovation could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. Science officer Min Ji-song sat in her laboratory aboard the Defiant, surrounded by holographic displays showing data collected from their encounters with the Concordat. Weeks of analysis had revealed patterns that others had missed, and what she found disturbed her deeply. "Captain, I think you need to see this," she called over the comm system. "I've discovered something about how the Concordat maintains their power." Captain Park arrived at the lab minutes later, followed by Commander Lee. Som's reputation for thorough analysis made her findings impossible to ignore. "Look at these energy signatures," she explained, pointing to various readings. "Each Concordat member species uses technology that's artificially limited. The controlling species maintains exclusive access to advanced systems while providing restricted versions to their supposed allies." She brought up more displays, showing detailed scans of various Concordat vessels. "See these power systems. They're deliberately designed to be dependent on resources that only the ruling council can provide. It's not an alliance. It's carefully managed subjugation." Park studied the data carefully. "Can you prove this conclusively?" "Better than that," Song replied, pulling up another set of readings. "I can prove they're actively suppressing technological advancement among their member species. When we captured those boarding parties, I analyzed their equipment. The technology varies by species, but always in ways that maintain dependency." The implications were staggering. The Concordat's reputation for unity was a carefully constructed lie, maintained through technological control and deliberate suppression. "That's why they reacted so strongly to our innovations," Lee realized. "We weren't just resisting. We were demonstrating capabilities they worked to prevent." Song nodded eagerly. "Exactly. The quantum mirror drive, the entanglement system. These aren't just advanced technologies. They're exactly the kind of innovations the Concordat works to suppress." Park's expression turned thoughtful. "If we could prove this to the other species." "Already working on it," Song said, pulling up another display. "I've compiled irrefutable evidence. Energy signatures, material analysis, technological restrictions that can't be explained by natural development. The pattern is clear once you know what to look for." The captain studied the data for several long moments. This could change everything. Not through combat, but through truth. Over the next few days, Song worked with Communications Officer Song to prepare a broadcast package. They compiled the evidence into a format that would be understood by various species, including clear proof of the technological restrictions and artificial dependencies. "Broadcast ready," Communications announced from the bridge. We can transmit this through the entire Concordat communication network using their own relay stations. The quantum entanglement drive gives us an advantage, Lee added. We can broadcast from multiple points almost simultaneously. They won't be able to stop the transmission fast enough. Park stood at the center of his bridge, considering the implications of what they were about to do. This wasn't a battle of ships and weapons. It was an attack on the very foundation of the Concordat's power. Begin transmission, he ordered. The broadcast spread through Concordat space like a wave. Species that had accepted their place in the hierarchy for generations suddenly saw proof of their deliberate suppression. The careful deception that had maintained power for thousands of years began to unravel. Reports started coming in almost immediately. Ships from various member species began breaking formation. Some turned on their Concordat overseers. Others simply fled, refusing to follow orders now that the truth was known. Multiple uprisings reported across Concordat space. Kim reported from her sensor station. Their command structure is breaking down. The ruling council's response was swift but ineffective. Their attempts to dismiss the evidence only highlighted their desperation. Species that had been loyal for generations began questioning every restriction, every limitation they had accepted. They're trying to lock down their communication networks, Song reported. But it's too late. The evidence is spreading faster than they can contain it. The Defiant moved through space, using the quantum entanglement drive to broadcast from multiple points. Each jump spread the truth further, reaching more ships and worlds. The carefully maintained hierarchy of the Concordat began to crumble not under the force of weapons, but under the weight of truth. Now they know why we were such a threat, Park observed as they watched the chaos spread. We didn't just resist their control. We proved it was possible to advance beyond their artificial limitations. Song's discovery had done what no fleet could accomplish. The Concordat's power, built on deception and controlled technology, was breaking apart as their subjected species realized the truth about their supposed benefactors. Multiple Concordat vessels approaching, Kim announced. But they're not in attack formation. They're requesting asylum. Park smiled. The real victory wasn't defeating the Concordat in battle. It was exposing the truth that would end their dominion forever. Song's careful investigation had revealed their greatest weakness, the lie at the heart of their power. As the Defiant continued its mission, the crew knew they had achieved something remarkable. They had changed the galaxy not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by revealing a truth that had been hidden for millennia. The breaking point had come not with a decisive battle, but with the simple power of knowledge freely shared. The massive capital world of the Concordat loomed before them, its orbital defenses still formidable despite the Empire's crumbling power. But the Defiant was no longer alone. Ships of various designs and origins surrounded it. Vessels from worlds that had broken free from Concordat control, each one representing a species that had chosen freedom over submission. Captain Park stood on his bridge, surveying the fleet that had gathered to support them. "Status report," he called out. "Allied ships report ready." Commander Lee responded from tactical. "Former Concordat vessels have integrated successfully with our command structure." Lieutenant Kim's voice carried excitement as she reported from her station. Multiple ships still arriving through fold space. The Liberation fleet grows larger by the hour. Dr. Cho's innovations had spread quickly among their allies once the restrictions were lifted. Species that had been deliberately held back for generations were now advancing rapidly, sharing technology and ideas freely. "The Concordat leadership is transmitting," communications announced. "They're demanding our surrender." "Put them on screen," Park ordered calmly. The ethereal forms of the Concordat Council appeared, their usual confidence replaced by barely concealed desperation. "This rebellion ends now," their leader declared. "You have disrupted the natural order of space. Submit or face annihilation." Park looked at his crew before responding. "The natural order? You mean the careful lies you've maintained for thousands of years? The deliberate suppression of advancement to keep others dependent on you?" Science Officer Song stepped forward, holding a data crystal. We found your central archives. The complete history of how you've manipulated and controlled other species, every advancement you've suppressed, every innovation you've stolen and hidden away. The Concordat leaders' forms rippled with anger, but fear showed through their attempted intimidation. Their perfect system of control was falling apart, exposed to the light of truth. Final warning, came the transmission. Our defenses are impregnable. You cannot hope to succeed. Park smiled slightly. We're not here to attack your defenses. We're here to share the truth, all of it, with everyone. He nodded to Song, who activated a complex transmission sequence. The entire history of the Concordat's deception began broadcasting on all frequencies, reaching every ship and station in the system. The reaction was immediate. Ships in the Concordat's defensive formation began breaking away. Stations that had been loyal for centuries suddenly turned their sensors toward their former masters, seeking confirmation of the damning evidence. This is how liberty spreads, Park observed to his crew. Not through conquest, but through understanding. The Concordat's capital defenses opened fire, but their attacks were uncoordinated, confused. More ships were fleeing than fighting. The carefully maintained order of millennia was dissolving in hours. Through it all, the Defiant and its allies held position, broadcasting the truth that was more powerful than any weapon. The few shots that came their way were easily avoided using the quantum entanglement drive. They're evacuating the capital, Kim reported. Council members are attempting to flee. Let them go, Park ordered. Their power is already gone. The galaxy is changing. In the days that followed, representatives from dozens of species gathered to form a new coalition. The Defiant's crew watched as former enemies became allies, sharing knowledge and technology freely. It's remarkable, Song observed, watching the proceedings. They're advancing more in days than the Concordat allowed in centuries. The new alliance was built on principles of equality and shared progress. Each species contributed its unique perspectives and innovations, creating possibilities that even humans hadn't imagined. Captain Park stood in the great hall where the new coalition was being formed, remembering how it had all started with one ship refusing to submit. The Defiant had become more than a warship. It was a symbol of the possible, of what could be achieved when artificial limitations were removed. The galaxy will never be the same, Commander Lee remarked as they watched species that had been enemies now working together. That's what happens when you let people think differently, Park replied. Creativity and innovation can't be controlled. They can only be shared and celebrated. The Defiant remained in service, but its role had changed. It became a symbol of cooperation and progress, helping to guide the new alliance as it grew and developed. As the sun set on the Concordat's capital world, now the center of the new coalition, Park looked at his crew. The people who had helped change the galaxy through courage, innovation, and the simple power of truth. The stars seemed brighter somehow, now that they were truly free. A new dawn had come to the galaxy, and it had started with one ship that dared to think differently. The HSS Defiant had earned its place in history not through the weapons it carried, but through the ideas it represented. That progress couldn't be contained, that creativity would always find a way, and that the greatest power in the universe was the freedom to think, to innovate, and to grow. In the years that followed, the story of the Defiant would be told throughout the galaxy, not as a tale of war, but as a legend of how truth and innovation had brought real freedom to the stars.